Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kostuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from sunny St. Augustine, Florida, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kostuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Florida. How are you, Kostuba? Good morning. Today's study of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Did it again.
Ask him how he is, and then don't wait for a reply. You're like, I
want to tell you how I am.
I really deeply feel.
Do you even care?
I do care.
Is
How
it
are
just
you?
all a show?
How are you feeling? How are you feeling? You grounded today?
Neglected, ignored.
Oh, someone reach out and hug that man.
What's going
Everything
on?
good with you?
Yeah, everything's good.
All right. We hung out with Kosher Rupa last night.
Very
She
good.
invited us over for vegan ice
She's a-
cream and gluten-free cookies.
She's a saintly person.
She is, boy. She's one of those first generation devotees who they don't make any material sense. I was like, when did you get into Krishna consciousness? She's like, 11. I was like, 11? 11. Yeah, just, I heard the devotees chant and I was like, oh my God, yes, this makes sense. It was like one, like
11.
yeah. What did she lived across the street from the Laguna Beach temple. Yeah.
Really?
It's like unbelievable story. It's almost something magic happened in the 70s. And if you look back in retrospect, it's like, that was crazy. That's a crazy story. It's almost crazy, but there's something like Prabhupada just reclaimed all these people to start a bhakti movement. And then just like, it couldn't have happened any other way if it wasn't so crazy and extreme. You know what I was doing at 11? I was just breaking things, watching cartoons,
Stealing things.
breaking things,
No,
riding my bike around.
spilling.
The last thing I was thinking about was God.
You were spilling things right now.
Spilling things, yes. Spilling
Don't
things.
resent being called the spiller.
Yes.
It's okay. It's hard.
All right. Miss Mara, do you have any announcements for us today before we get into the good stuff?
Yeah. We have back to recovery group meetings today at 1 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And Michelle Berger is doing an asana class for our Patreon members today at 3:30.
Okay. I've got a little message for Mara. If you want people to go to these classes, you got to be like, hey, we got the Bhakti Recovery. You got to sell it a little bit. You're like, it's the Bhakti Recovery Group. I was like, okay, I'm not eager to go to that.
Mary's going to be like, find somebody else then. I do it my way.
I thought it balanced it out.
You gotta sell these products.
Yeah.
It's the Bhakti Recovery
Do you have
Group.
any products you want to sell this morning?
You got a new shirt, Raghunath.
Thank you.
Did you get
Thank
that
you.
down in Florida?
You know what? I was looking at some of those clips I've been posting about myself wearing the cutoff shelter shirt. I was like, I look like a bum. I look like.
But I don't know if plaid is good for video.
Plaid is good or not good?
I think it's considered not to be good for film.
Oh God, can't win here. Well, I tried. I tried to I just step it up a little bit. Okay.
You look good. You look
Back to the drawing board. Tomorrow, I'll have a whole wardrobe change. You know what? It's got nothing to do with the shirt, Kostuba. It's the message.
That's right.
Let's
What's
get
the
into
message today?
The message is, you got the message? You got a nugget for us?
I sent one to you. Did you
Oh.
get it, Mara?
Yeah. 1 second. This is good.
You like it? You haven't seen it yet.
I saw it. Here we go. This is from Oscar Wilde, one of my favorites.
You have something about Oscar Wilde. Why is it whenever we mention Oscar Wilde, you light up? What's that?
I like him. He's one of my. You know what? If you Portrait of Dorian Gray, I find to be a very Krishna conscious book.
I don't
You
even know
know
what it's
what I mean by
about.
Krishna conscious minus Krishna? It's like conscious of the trappings of the material world.
Okay.
So if anybody wants a good weekend book to read, you can read it in a few days or a long night. Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's about the problems with bad association, keeping bad company, even when bad company seems sort of fun. That's what it was. He kept bad company even when bad company was sort of fun, and it destroyed his entire life.
Bad company.
Bad
The
company.
day I die.
What's that? A song?
Yeah, that is
By who?
by Bad Company.
Oh, all right.
Bad Co.
All right, Kostuba.
All right, hit it.
Kostuba's in a mood today. You notice that?
Am I?
Keep love in your heart. A life without it is like a sunless garden when the flowers are dead. Keep love in your heart. A life without it is like a sunless garden when the flowers are dead. Okay, you picked this one. Explain it to me. My brain's not, my brain's not functioning yet.
In one sense, it sounds, simple enough. Keep some love in your heart. But one reason why I thought it was appropriate for today is because we're getting into, we're reading in Srimad Bhagavatam about this, this brilliant thinker is now opening up for the first time because he's been playing like he's a mute, right? Like he's an oaf. Like he's
an oaf. That's a nicer way to say it. We've been saying dullard.
Well, dullard is really more accurate. So Jada literally means dull.
Yeah, I was saying doofus. That's not nice. But he was posing as that. He wasn't a doofus.
Posing as a dullard. He clearly was. That was clearly his intent. He wanted to be perceived as a dullard.
So people wouldn't bother him. I get that. Play dumb.
So now he's opening up, and he's getting technical now because he's like we were describing this yesterday, right? It's like if you got a team that you need to coach against another football team, say, you need to break it down. What?
I don't know. Mara's giving me hand signals. Oh yeah. By the way, this is the second football analogy in 2 days, Kostuba.
No, it's the same football analogy.
The second football analogy in 2 days.
It's the same football analogy 2 days.
Oh, it's the same football analogy. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you need to understand how that team functions. What are the different positions? Then you can understand how to respond. Without that, you've got no idea how to respond. You don't know. I need to have a fast guy lined up against this fast guy. I need to have a strong guy lined up against this strong. Otherwise, you're going to just run. You will be hopeless in responding.
Mm-hmm.
So now what's happening here is Jada Bharta is laying out, this is how the mind works, right? Here's how it functions. It has these different senses. It's taking them, it becomes absorbed in them. It's going to get more technical today, a bit more technical, describing how the mind functions. Now, really, when Oscar Wilde says something like keep love in your heart, a yogi will hear that. Not merely from a sentimental point, like particularly a bhakti yogi will hear that not entirely from a sentimental point, but they can actually analyze what are we talking about here, right? That our thoughts will get absorbed. Generally, we have these senses that are they're all channels to the mind, and they're feeding in different data. It may be visual data, right? It may be audio data through the ears, visual data through the eyes, tactile data coming through, the skin, the nervous system. And so, and the mind becomes generally fully absorbed in that, right? The mind becomes fully absorbed in that. In this way, the mind goes away from the self. The yogis are interested in bringing the mind toward the self, going within, right? but generally our mind is we're looking through the mind outward and taking in data through the senses, and that sensory data becomes our full absorption. You know, sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's bitter, you know, but our experiencing of that data becomes our focus. And it's some, maybe even focus isn't the right word, because it gets complicated. And what we're going to read about today is like how it's like how it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies and multiplies. Like they say, when you take three primary colors, that you mix them into unlimited varieties. So the way that our senses connect with our mind and blend with our conditioning, it manifests in an unlimited varieties of thought and absorption, and we lose touch with the self. And what is the nature of the self? The nature of the self is love. We have like a eternal connection through love with God and with every living being, and we lose out on that. So if we're focused, you know, we say keep love in our heart, but we don't even know fully what it means, because usually it's in the context of drawing some kind of sensory gratification from another being, whether it's validation, whether it's physical, you know, whether it has something to do with how our relationship to this being affects our ego, how we feel about ourselves, or how we're seen by others. You know, we wrap that up in something called love. We wouldn't call that love, right? The more discriminating bhakti yogi recognizes, no, that's some kind of business deal you're trying to work out. It's not truly love.
Ooh, I like that. Some transactional love.
There's some kind of transaction.
Give me this, I'll give you a little bit of that.
Yeah, but from the bhakti yoga perspective, it's saying if you are not connected to that real love, if you are not on any level awakening your loving nature towards God and every living being, then it's like a sunless garden. You know, the potential is there for the growth of beautiful, fragrant flowers. But there's no sun shining on it, and all the dead flowers are depressing, right? It's like, oh man, all the life, there's no life, there's limp, it's got no fragrance, it's rotting away. When the flowers start to rot, you know, they go from being fragrant to actually, you know, smelling, you know, the horrible odor. You know, that's what our life is without that divine love.
You know, the analogy I like is that the desire to want to love is so inherent and so strong that we're ready to love anybody, because there's like a loneliness in the heart and we feel like a zero, yet we want to be one, that oneness with God. But there's a deep feeling of zeroness and disconnection, and there's desperation for oneness. And instead of reposing it in God, we repose it in another zero. And we're hoping that 0 plus 0 equals 1. And it just doesn't.
Sometimes people say, like, when relationships are breaking up, you know, especially a woman may turn towards a man because they're a little bit more sensitive. They're a little bit more.
Are they? I'm sensitive.
You know, are you?
No, not really.
Okay. But they may say something like, what's the phrase that they say, like I feel totally empty now. Like, you know, they say something like that, right? Like they use this.
What do they say, Mara?
What do they say, Mara?
What do you say when you get your heart broken?
You ever turned to a guy and said, it's all empty now. Our whole relationship.
Oh,
is
yeah.
empty.
Yeah.
Right? They say something like that.
Say
right?
that. They always say that.
I've heard
I'm
that
looking
one.
at the women's group over in Costa Rica. They're like, no, I've never said that.
Empty.
I've never
Empty,
said
yeah.
I've always left him.
But it's kind of like you were under the illusion of, you know, in one sense it's been empty all along, but there was an illusion of, you know, but because it was that
an illusion of wholeness.
There was an illusion of wholeness, an illusion of love, but because all along it was really a business transaction. When the numbers were finally crunched in the end and there was nothing left, you say, oh, it's empty. Well, you're full within, right? But you're looking for your fulfillment externally. And
some people say, no, you don't understand. It was a great fit, but she died or he died. Well, that's another problem that makes us zero. Zero is It's that love is, we can't have that love forever. It does go away, and you keep that small L love with you. Of course, someone that you love, that was that perfect fit, that assisted you in life, that helped you grow in life. You'll keep that spirit there, but it's not the being that made you one. It's the being who lifted you higher towards God. That made you one. Right. Like the example, you could say, well, are you talking about you should just got to be alone like an island? No. We even say that you need gurus, you need friends, you need mentors that lift you higher. But it's not like they're your God. The guru is not your God. Don't make the guru your God. The guru connects you. A good friends connect you. A good parent connects the child.
Love lifts you up where you belong.
Yeah. Yeah. That song is a very, very deep song.
Okay.
I got him today. He's mine. He is mine.
Burst out singing them. I'll throw them out left and right. Okay.
Bring me a higher love.
Yeah, there's that one too.
Bring me a higher love.
Okay, now we have to move on.
Okay.
Now we have to move on. Okay. Ready?
Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam madirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome in the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjanasalakaya Chaksurunmidatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. Reading
from
Miss Mara. Come on.
Reading from Canto 5, Chapter 11, Text 11.
Thank you. Oh. Chapter 11, Text 11. All right, ready? This is Judd Bart dropping the bomb. The physical elements, nature, the original cause, culture, destiny, and the time element are all material causes. Agitated by these material causes, the 11 functions transform into hundreds of functions, and then into thousands, and then into millions. What?
Yikes.
But all these transformations do not take place automatically by mutual combination. Rather, they are under the direction of the Supreme Personality. Interesting.
Let's go back a little bit, Raghunath. Here, let's go back.
Really? You want to go back? Those are the ones I like to just skip right over.
No, but if you dig into them, you might find something interesting, And there's a connection here to the whole yoga thing in a direct, like to the whole Yoga Sutras here.
Will we? Okay.
Yeah. Because if we go back to text 8 and text 9, he uses the word vritti.
Yeah, the vrittis.
Yeah. So the vritti means like Patanjali, commonly it's translated, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is like fluctuations of the mind, right? The vrittis.
Yeah. I like to call the vrittis the stuff in the mind, the stirred up stuff in the mind.
Okay. Moving through different stuff. Here, we have a whole different conception of what vrittis are coming in. You see, he mentions vrittis in text 8. Let's go back. What does he say in text 8? He said oscillations. Yeah, when the living entity's mind becomes absorbed in sense gratification in the material world, it brings about his conditioned life. And so, what's at the end of this? Oh, it's very interesting. Oh, yeah, this is interesting. There's a connection here. Because you see, like if you're reading the Yoga Sutras, what we have to realize is that Patanjali is drawing from ancient literature that predates him by millennia, right? He's drawing from his Bhagavad Gita. And here you can see like a direct kind of connection. I mean, I can't say for sure that he's reading Bhagavatam, but this is like very here. This is like,
let's hear what you got.
Great Yoga Sutras kind of stuff. If you get to the end of this text 80 says, similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, that's chittavritti. That's the fluctuations of the mind. It causes suffering. And when detached from material sense gratification, it brings about the original brightness of Krishna consciousness, which is Prabhupada's way of, let's see, what exactly did he translate there? He said, the verse originally said, Vritti manaha shayate nyatra tattvam. Tattvam means like, Prabhupada's saying it's original Krishna consciousness, its original state, right? And so, in the Yoga Sutras, it's almost like the same exact thing. It said right as it starts off, right where the Yoga Sutra, it says, Yoga chittavritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the changing states of the mind. And then it says, tada drastu svarupe vastanam, right? Then the seer abides in their own true nature, in their tattva, right? So he's saying the same thing here. The mind can be going into the vrittis, can be totally absorbed in the vrittis, or the alternative is that it becomes established in its tattva. It becomes established in its swarupa, different way of saying the same thing. So the yogis kind of recognize this, but what's happening in Bhagavatam is, and what Jadabharta is, he's using the same word vritti, but he's referring to something else. He's saying that the 10 senses are the vrittis. Like, in other words, my mind can be absorbed in what I see. My mind can be absorbed in what I hear. My mind can be absorbed in what I touch. He's saying it like that, right? You with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you at all interested, or totally bored? You're like, you're gone.
I'm interested in lots of things, but not so much this.
Okay, well, this is the
But I'm
Bible, so
listening.
let's
listening.
try.
I'm hoping to develop interest in it.
Okay. So Prabhupada, it says, similarly, when the mind is absorbed in material sense gratification, it causes suffering, right? When our mind becomes caught up in these, even you might say, no, but don't we find pleasure? No, ultimately you find suffering, because whatever you connect with outside of yourself, whatever is composed of matter that you become absorbed in, even if you find some pleasure through it, ultimately it's going to cause you suffering. Ultimately, you will either detach yourself from it or become detached from it, and it'll cause suffering. So the implication here is that at any given moment, the mind is absorbed. Patanjali is saying in 5 fluctuating states. Jadabharta is saying in one of 10 senses, and then he throws one more on top of it, which he calls the false ego, right? Or he calls the ahankara. That there's this force within, right? That there's this element within that is directing us to identify with that which we're not. And the mind becomes, and that begins to kind of mix up all the other ones. It takes all those other 10 elements and begins to blend them in all kind of different ways. And that's what we're reading about here in today's verse. In what was it, verse 11?
Yeah.
The physical elements. Oh, it's saying here's how everything gets mixed up. It's saying you have 10 senses, and then you have a mind, which is the 11th, and then you throw in the false ego. And so all that you're perceiving through your senses is going to begin to blend, and it's going to blend in different ways for different people, because we all have, and here he's saying, we all have a different dravya. He says there's different physical objects that we're engaging with. We all have a svabhava. We all have our own individual nature. Then it says ashaya. We all have a different culture. And then karma. We're all destined in different ways according to how we behaved in the past. And then kala. Time affects these different things. The way I perceive one thing at one moment in time, I'll perceive it in a different way and experience it in a different way at another point in time. So according to all these different, what do they call them? Like in statistics, the variations, I suppose. Variables.
Yeah.
According to all these different variables, what we experience through our senses blends in first 11 ways, but then you add all these variables and it turns into thousands and ultimately millions of thoughts that we have, that we experience, that are determined by all these different variations. So you and I are looking at the same thing, and you're feeling one way about it, and you're thinking one way about it, and I'm looking the same. What's happening right now, and I'm looking at something I'm experiencing in a different way. You know, so he's again he's giving this king, right? Look at him. Look at his mental state. He's being carried on a palanquin, like he's some kind of god, and he's totally frustrated. His mind becomes full of anger, and then he's chewing out a person that appears to be a dullard. What's the point in chewing out a dullard? He's not going to understand what you say, you know. But he is all completely disturbed in his mind. So Jadabharta is saying, "Look at you," you know, in a gentle way. He's saying, "Look at you. Look at the state that you're in. You know, you're suffering right now. Your mind has due to all these different variables, your mind is in a place right now that you don't like. You're not comfortable. And look at how it's causing you to behave. You're becoming crude. You're becoming arrogant. And even now you're offending innocent people, which is going to bring you bad karma. All because you don't know how your mind works. Let's talk about how the mind works. Because if you're going to get control of it, you need a strategy. Let's start breaking it down. That's what's happening.
Imagine how the king could have reacted. That's okay. Imagine how the king could have reacted. Could have just been like, let's just keep going.
Yeah, no, but he was interested.
This is what made the whole story interesting. Okay. Text 12.
That's not the only thing that made the story interesting, maybe for you. Okay. It'll get more interesting. Keep going.
Yes. Text 12. The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy.
Okay.
What's the actual Sanskrit there for Krishna consciousness?
Let us see.
The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness.
Different activities. I think it may just be a reference to the previous verse where it uses tattva.
Okay. They have been existing from time immemorial. The individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing since time immemorial. Sometimes they are manifest in the wakening state and in the dream state, but during sleep, unconsciousness, or trance, they disappear. A person who is liberated in this life, Jivan Mukti, can see all these things vividly. Interesting.
This is straight Bhagavad Gita too, and you were mentioning that the other day. A lot of what he's saying we'll find in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter. You know what he's been saying over the course of this chapter. You know, in the 15th chapter, it kind of just breaks down our situation there, beginning with text 7. You know, 15:7. I'm going to read.
Mayavam so Jiva Loke. Is that it?
That's the one. Yeah, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The living entities
in this material world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling. With great difficulty with the six senses and the mind.
Which 6 senses, which include the mind. Yeah.
6 senses, which include the mind.
Do you know
Great verse, huh? The living entity. I can't remember the next one.
The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another.
Great one, huh?
As the air carries aromas.
We carry a different conception of ourselves from one body to another. It's all like from the ego and the mind, isn't it?
And then it determines our next body, which is what he was just talking about a few verses back, right? And we take on another body. Remember, we're talking about you can become a bird, you could become, you know.
Yeah. Our passions control us. The passions themselves aren't even us. You can analyze them. Like, how is that going to fulfill you? How will this desire that seems like it's you, that's not even you, how will that fulfill you? You got to really talk these things through, or else you get just trapped in this Maya, in this illusion.
So then the mind carries one into the next body. It says the living entity in the material world carries their different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. It's very subtle how how this, the soul moves with the mind, with its conceptions, with its material conceptions into a body that's formed and shaped in a way that's perfectly appropriate for their conceptions.
And this is
And
also
then,
why, go on.
You go ahead if you want.
I was just going to say, this is why this is why we start to add devotional service, little activities within bhakti that perhaps previously we never did before. And by adding them to our life, we get a little attached to them. We start to think this is normal. Like we start thinking, okay, this food now we're going to offer this food to Krishna. And we get attached to that food cooked and prepared with love. We get attached to that ritual. We get attached to the consciousness behind what we're doing. And the result of acting, controlling our thoughts and controlling the way we treat people. And we get attached to those things. Otherwise, going on autopilot from previous births, right? It says the individual soul bereft of Krishna consciousness has many ideas and activities created in the mind by the external energy. They have been existing from time immemorial. Means we've been practicing bad habits for lifetimes, not just for this lifetime, for lifetimes. And they keep on feeding us more desires. And we think, hey, this will actually make you happy. And we just almost like going deeper and deeper into a desert looking for water. Off track.
I really think that what we need to do, we need to expand the services that we do for like Wisdom of the Sages listeners. What to speak of like Sage Group members?
Yeah,
because like everybody needs it. Like it's one thing to say, hey, this all makes sense to me. Hey, I like this. Hey, I got a little faith in this. Hey, I'm a bhakti yogi. This is my thing. But where it really starts to get traction and where the self-transformation begins is when you develop your strategy and you begin to live it, right? Okay, these are my beliefs and these are my thoughts and here's my faith, but how am I going to practice it? I need to map out the strategy. Okay, I'm going to wake up at this time, right? I'm going to do this much study and contemplation, throughout the day. I'm going to do this much meditation throughout the day. I'm going to add, like you just mentioned, like the meditation or the ritual behind cooking and eating. I'm going to begin to make that part of my day. And then I'm going to do that until it becomes easy. And then I'm going to turn the screw a little tighter, right? And add something else to it, And I plan to be there in 6 months from now, right? We need to kind of like, if we don't kind of map out where we're going, what we're doing, and where we plan to be when, then chances are we largely spin our wheels,
We spin our wheels, yeah, and that's what bhakti is. It's just spinning our wheels in the material world, exhausting ourselves through consumption, getting disgusted with, I consumed too much. Let's try another flavor of consumption. Okay, that was too much. Let's try another flavor of consumptions. Slowly, it's not going to be the things that we, like it appears like we're eating when we're taking prasad. We're not. We're actually just tasting love. Right. And all these rituals are also all to bring us to love. And after a while, it's not like we're acting on the impulse of, I need food, I need sweets, I need Indian sweets. It's not that anymore. We're like, we want to taste the love of the cook who offered this with love. And we want to do anything that becomes the motivating force behind everything. And even though it appears like they're running on the same track, it becomes an entirely separate thing. The same way we treat music. We're listening to music, not for our own enjoyment, or not for enjoyment, but enjoyment for the soul, and enjoyment because we know it pleases Bhagwan. And the same with our work. Our work, if it's really disconnecting us with God, we don't find that work enjoyable whatsoever. The whole thing is actually leading us in another direction, even though it appears in the same outfit, the same sort of costume. It's actually a completely parallel thing. That's the difference between bhakti and just sort of like walking away from material sense gratification, which appears what's happening in the Yoga Sutras. It's actually sort of in the same costume, but it's actually a whole different activity. What do you think about that?
Well, that kind of reminds me of like in Bhagavatam where it says, knowledge of self-realization, even if free from all material affinity, does not look well. It's an interesting way to phrase it. It doesn't look well if it's devoid of a conception of the of achyuta, of Krishna.
Mm.
It's like all of those practices, there's a purpose behind them all. There's the it's one thing to become materially detached. It's another thing to fall in love with God. But just getting back to where we were, it's, in the 15th chapter, it says, then, the living entity thus takes on another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, certain, you get all the equipment, a certain type of eye, a certain type of tongue, a certain type of nose. A dog has a very different nose than a human has, right?
Yep.
It's going to perceive in a different way, through that equipment, right? A certain sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. They're all plug-in devices into the computer of the mind, and thus they enjoy a particular set of sense objects. Okay, you're just following the stuff around. Now, this is the point. This is where connected to what we have here, because it mentioned here a person who is liberated in this life, a jivan mukta, they can see all this vividly. Right? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita after that, he says, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body they will enjoy under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly. But those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization, they cannot see what's taking place, though they may try. Right? They may try to understand.
We have the ability as a human to step back and see ourselves different than our desires. Isn't that interesting? Separate than our minds, separate than our self-conception. And to maybe even replace that self-conception, like, well, okay, that's what I'm presenting as. What am I actually? The fish doesn't have the ability to do that. The fish is like, I'm a shark. I bite things. That's what I do. I'm a seal, and I go for little fish. This is what they're like, almost like locked into their conception of self. We have the ability to step out and hear, okay, well, then this is the concept in yoga system of svadhyaya. Self-study doesn't mean just like I study my hand. Okay, I got a big hand. I got a big nose. That's not self-study. Self-study means see yourself through the mirror of the sacred literature, which is actually giving you an invite into seeing what you actually look like. Right. Oh, I'm a pure spirit soul. That's what I actually am. What would it be like to try on that suit of clothing? And then you find out, like, this isn't a suit of clothing. This is the original me. I'm a pure spirit soul, eternally connected to God, who's got his back towards God, running quickly in the other direction. Okay.
It's what you're saying is so important, because if you're not seeing like this, you see, someone say, well, prove all this. How can you prove to me that we take a next birth and our conceptions that we develop in this birth carry us into another body, maybe even an animal body? I mean, this is just some faith that you have, and it's got no more validity than any other faith. Someone may say like that, because can you show it to me? And really what it has to do with hearing this and contemplating it, absorbing oneself in it, immersing oneself in it, and then looking at the world through it, and then seeing how well it all lines up,
Right.
And that takes time, and that takes thoughtfulness. But Krishna, in the verse that we just read, in text 15:10 from the Bhagavad Gita, this is the way Krishna put it. It's even kind of poetic. He says, Vimudha nanu pasyanti. The animal, right? The mudha.
The mudha,
fool, right?
Yeah, pashya.
Nanu pasyanti. They cannot see. But pasyanti jnana chakshusaha. But when you're looking through the jnana chakshusa, when you're looking through literally means the eyes of knowledge.
Jnana chakshusha. That's your Sanskrit glossary goodie today. Jnana chakshus. Mara?
The eyes of knowledge.
The eyes of knowledge. You know that. Huh? You got that one?
So what it's saying is let these sacred texts and their teachings, let them be the lens through which you see the world, and practice it. And if you practice it, your faith in this will increase. Your faith, and you will be able to see it it's all just clicking, and your faith is getting deeper and stronger. You can begin to infer the truth even though you can't see. Like, in other words, you and I may be indoors looking through a window, and there's a breeze blowing and the leaves are moving. Now I don't feel the breeze, and I could tell you, hey, it's windy out there, and you said, prove it. I don't feel any wind. Well, no, but you can clearly infer it through seeing the movement of the leaves. So what these yogis are saying is, when we take this, when we take these texts and what they're describing, and we look at the world through it, King Rahugana, he lost that. He didn't have that ability. His emotions, his desire for prestige, his desire for comfort as he was riding on that palanquin, his desire for his prestige to be maintained. You look like a fool if you're riding in a palanquin and it's all bumpy. It's like, it's supposed to be prestigious, and now it's like this rocky ride. He becomes controlled by it. He becomes upset. So Jadabharta is saying, hey, slow down and try to see the world through these texts. Try to perceive it in another way, and you will actually be able to perceive. It will be proved to you, because it's going to make so much sense and it's going to be so consistent. Right.
All right. Ready? Text 13 and 14. No, text 12. Text 13. Oh, here we go.
And
right
14.
Back to chapter 15 of the Gita.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is all chapter 15. There are two kinds of kshetragya, right? Knower of the field. The living entity, as explained above, and the supreme personality of Godhead, who is explained as follows. He is all-pervading cause of creation. He is full in himself and is not dependent on others, right? He is perceived by hearing and direct perception. He's perceived by hearing and direct perception. He is self-effulgent and does not experience birth, death, old age, and disease. He is the controller of all the demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma. He is called Narayan. He is the shelter of all living entities after the annihilation of this material world. He is full of all opulence, and he is the resting place of everything material. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, the supreme personality of Godhead. By his own potency, he is present within the hearts of all living entities, just as the air or vital force is within the bodies of all beings, moving and non-moving. In this way, he controls the body. In his partial feature, the supreme personality of Godhead enters all bodies and controls them.
This verse, these two verses, this is just like a shower of nectar, really. I mean, it's like this is talking about the super soul, right? This is talking about the Paramatma, right? So he's laid out all of these different ingredients. Like, he's saying, here's your situation, King. You're the spark of spiritual energy, but you're perceiving the world through a mind that is hooked up to senses, right? That mind becomes programmed by its experience. Your karma becomes part of the equation. All these different elements become part of the equation. You perceive through your senses, and then this machine is blending all of these different elements into your thought experiences. Like, we were talking yesterday about how we have so many thoughts in a day, and most of them are negative, and then they're repetitive, and that's your world that you live in, right? He's saying those are all ingredients. And hey, there's another ingredient that as you move through this, not only are you experiencing this blend of thoughts, right? Like, I have my blend of thoughts and you have your blend of thoughts, Raghunath, right? And Mara has her blend of thoughts, and everybody that's listening to this right now, they have their unique blend of thoughts that are kind of produced through these varying, through all these variables, right? I experiencing mine, you're experiencing yours. He's saying, but there's another experiencer that's within the heart of every living being, whether it's moving like a human or an animal, or even if it's non-moving like a plant. There's another being in there that's plugging right into that blend of experience, and that's the Paramatma. That Paramatma is with you at every moment, King. Like, and actually, it's that Paramatma that's in control of all of this machinery that's creating these variables. if you become aware of that being, it changes everything, right? It's actually that being within your heart. First of all, if you were aware that God was in your heart at every moment, you wouldn't be behaving the way that you just behaved.
Who, me personally?
No, not you're the king.
Okay. You're right.
No, it's true. Yeah, you wouldn't have been arrogant. You wouldn't have been frustrated. You wouldn't have been angry. You know, this is all actually 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We're talking about there's the field and
right.
two
Yeah.
knower the fields, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
then the 13th chapter goes on to describe the paramam in detail, like what's happening right here.
It's like there's an adult. It's the ultimate. There's an adult in the room. Like,
Yeah, there's an adult. Yeah,
there's an adult in the room.
Behave yourself.
Behave yourself.
Yeah, well, that's again one of my favorite verses from the Gita, where it says that those that are aware of the paramama, they don't become degraded by the mind, because there's an adult in the room, and I'm aware of it. I feel the weight of that. There's two names for Lord Vishnu given here in this verse. There may be more, but two, the most fundamental. One is Narayana, and one is Vasudeva.
Vasudeva.
Yeah, so they're both interesting. Like Narayana, it means, like, Nara means the people, and Ayana, it refers to, like, he's the shelter of the people, or like he's the people abide in him and are supported by him. Right? And Vasudeva, it implies two things. Like the root Vasa means to dwell or to abide. Right. And Deva means like the god, right? So it can be interpreted like Narayana, like we all dwell or abide within him, right? Within his energy. Or even they say, commonly commentators will go to the fact that, like they say, at the end of the universe, if you haven't become liberated by the end of the universe's cycle, then the universe is absorbed into the body of Lord Vishnu, and then it comes back out again, over the course of a very long period of time. So we all exist in his body in that sense, right? We could also say that this universe is his body, and he's the soul. So we're all existing within him. We're all dwelling within him. But also that Vasudeva, he's the God that's dwelling within all of us, right? He's within the heart of every living being. Again, entirely plugged into our computer of the mind, and fully aware of the varieties of thought that we're our own unique combination of variety of thought. He's entirely aware of it, understands exactly what we desire, has the full calculation of what our karma is, what because basically our karma is just a manifestation of our desire separate from him. And so that one,
pretty interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. so that one being, Lord Vishnu, expands to perceive the thought processes of every living being, their desires, and what they've merited through their actions, and then blend the entire menagerie into our future, into our destiny, what we experience next. Now, of course, we always, and it's not like it's just some fate that we have no control over. According to our next choices, it just continues that blend, and there's one being that's making it all happen. And Jadabharta is drawing the king's attention to that by saying, think about him, hear about him. It's amazing the things that he says. He's all pervading, cause of creation. He is full in himself, not like us, right? And non-dependent on others. He is perceived by hearing and direct perception. Very important, right? Because we don't see with direct perception, but we can see with hearing until we can perceive it with direct perception. The yogis go in the heart and they perceive him with direct perception. He is self-effulgent, does not experience birth, death, old age, and disease. Controller of all the devas. He's called Narayana, right? The shelter of all living entities. After the annihilation of this material world, right? We go back into his body. He's full of all opulences, strength, wealth, beauty, etc. Renunciation like that. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, he's full of all opulences, and he is the resting place of everything material. He is therefore known as Vasudeva, the supreme personality of Godhead. By his own potency, he is present within the hearts of all living entities, just as the air of vital force is within the bodies of all living beings, moving and non-moving. In this way, he controls the body. We may make a choice, we may have a desire, but he's the one that actually is the enabler, right? Is the one that makes it possible. In his partial feature, right? The Paramam is not, his full feature is Krishna, where his full personality is revealed. But in his partial feature, the Supreme Personality Godhead enters all bodies and controls them. Well, this information changes that. If you actually, the fact that we're not aware that God is within our heart is very problematic. It's very sad. It's very unfortunate. and it's such a, the fact that the soul of the universe is right within our body, ready to help us at any moment, and that we are entirely unaware of it, it's what makes us make fools of ourselves. Right? And suffer.
Right in front of our eyes, we can't see him. All right. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. Miss Mara.
To Madam Mara.
Madam Malibu Mara. Okay, what do we got, Mara? Take that mic.
Thanks. Understand the game before you respond.
That's right. You need strategy.
Yeah.
The game.
Well, it was from
That's another Seinfeld one. It's all about the game.
The game.
Keep Big L love in your heart.
Keep a little love in your heart.
Big L love in your heart.
Awaken your loving nature toward God and every living being.
They're all like 70s songs. Awaken a little love in your heart.
We're zeros desperately searching for a one.
Like that.
Map out your strategy and goals for sadhana bhakti.
We need a strategy, Raghunath. Everybody.
Set your goals.
Yeah.
Grill biscuits.
Okay.
All the rituals are to bring us to love.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
See yourself through the mirror of sacred literature.
Like that. Like it.
Become aware of the Paramatma within at all times.
If you leave me now.
Our karma is a manifestation of desires separate from God. And behave yourself. There's an adult in the room.
If you leave me now, you take away the things that bother me. You know that song?
The biggest part of me? It's Chicago. If you leave me now. I remember that song.
I had a Chicago
little
t-shirt.
kid hearing that.
I was a little kid with a Chicago t-shirt.
But that was a big hit back then.
Laura from Chicago. Thanks everybody for joining us, including Laura from Chicago. We sing that theme song for. The Karate Kid soundtrack? Thanks everybody who joins us on Zoom. You can join us. Hey, other. You're listening out there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. You can join us here live at Zoom. Just email Miss Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and you can join our little coven, White Witches. We do this every day, every morning, 6 a.m., weekends 8 a.m., and we have about one more day here in St. Augustine.